Ledger Wallet just released its live desktop client. A new study finds that Korean banks hold over $2 billion in cryptocurrency. A new floating Utopia will be immune to sea level rise, and it will also feature its own government as well as cryptocurrency. A new academic paper from the Imperial College of London shows tremendous backing for Bitcoin. Even though the study was paid for by a crypto exchange, who cares? We'll take any good headline. Seriously, we're desperate. VeChain just released its mobile client. CBOE looks to get a new Bitcoin ETF approved by the SEC. IOTA prepares to be tested in a new EU-funded smart city. You think you're the only ones with smart cities? Ha! Take that, China. The UK financial regulator welcomes a new set of blockchain projects into its regulatory sandbox.
Nice.
Maker raises its debt ceiling to $100 million. Delaware State enlists IBM for a blockchain contract. And CZ continues to be a blockchain superhero by donating $1 million in funding to the victims of flooding in West Japan. We've got all your headlines mixed with some daily market analysis. I'm Elio Trades, and your FUD TV Daily Update starts now. Welcome back, FUD Nation. Now, as you can see, we're on the Bitcoin charts and we're down about 0.5%, 0.6%, 0.64%. Honestly, I wouldn't worry too much about it. We've actually had a nice trajectory over the last week. We had a low here of 5,900 about a week ago, and now we're working our way back up and we're almost to 68. We're holding at 6,800, which is a line of resistance here. It shows why we've been bouncing off it a little bit. But as we can see, we've just seen a trend of sideways and then a little pump and sideways, a little pump, sideways, a little pump, a little pump. It's a little pump.
Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang.
Yeah, sorry about that. Anyway, I won't say little pump 3 times in a row ever again. But at any rate, you can see here we're starting to see what may be, if we zoom out to our 3-month chart, it might be the signs of the first real reversal of the trend that we've seen in quite a while. We had a 2-month downtrend starting, May the 6th. We were hoping that it would reverse on June the 6th, and instead we got dump, dump, dump. We're working our way towards the end of this wedge pattern where people had predicted that there should be some sort of a breakout of Bitcoin towards this sort of mid-July moment, and I think that we're hitting it right now. It's not really a tremendous amount of pumping we're seeing, but we are seeing a reversal of sorts. It's been slow, it's been steady, there's been nothing too dynamic about it, lots of sideways action. If we zoom in, you can just see so much sideways action. Hopefully we can just keep working our way up step by step. It's hard to say. There's still a possibility we could dump down. I had predicted we would go down and touch levels around the 5K mark. We still haven't done that. So I'm not saying we will do that. I'm saying that that was sort of on the bloodier side of my predictions. We've heard predictions in the 3 to 5K range. I still think that this could be potential that we're seeing our real reversal here and we start making sustainable growth, but the volume's just been so low that it's very, very hard to tell. We've just gotten word that Korean banks are supposedly holding over $2 billion in cryptocurrency, and all I can say to that is, yeah, duh. I don't mean to oversimplify the topic, but it's pretty clear that Korea is a major player in the cryptocurrency game. Obviously, the banks and the institutions that are behind this, that are certainly part of that culture, would be playing along as well, probably in their more speculative investment category. But regardless, it's nice to know that there's action on both sides of the fence. It's not just the legacy financial institutions saying no, 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 and then the people begging for it. We can see that they're playing along, and that's probably why there's been such a push towards regulation and acceptance of these assets in Korea. They really just understand it culturally. They've been trading digital assets in various forms for a very long time. And so it's understandable why Bitcoin would have caught on so quickly and so rapidly there.
Let's bulgogi.
Seriously, that shit's delicious. Now, what you see behind me is the initial sort of spec concept for a floating utopia, as it's being called. It's really a country that's going to be existing on the water. It's going to be floating, so it's essentially immune to sea level rise. It's going to be built in sort of sheltered waters, but the idea is it's going to run off clean energy, wind turbine, solar power, and it's going to have its own government, and it's going to have its own cryptocurrency. It's a hugely experimental living sort of program here where you're essentially experimenting with voluntary democracy, you're experimenting with cryptocurrency as a national currency, and you're also experimenting with new sort of reimagined sustainable ways of living. If, for example, our way of life on traditional sort of beachside residences gets interrupted by sea level rise. I don't know, I found this pretty trippy. I just thought you guys might enjoy it. Let me know what you think about this floating utopia in the comments below. Ledger Wallets just released its live desktop client, so you can see your whole portfolio from your desktop. You can manage the apps on your Ledger. It's just a much more cohesive product than we've seen. Obviously, the Google extension apps are great. It's kind of a mix of Google extensions and desktop wallets. It's kind of all over the place with the Ledger integration, so hopefully this brings a little bit more of a cohesive, easy to access, easy to manage feel. So that's an extremely bullish sign. If you're out there using a Ledger, I am, and I can tell you that I'm very excited to start playing around with this product. A new academic study by the University College in London found, quote, massive backing for Bitcoin. Of course, this was a slightly biased study as it was funded by eToro, which is a traditional stock trading platform that's launching their own crypto exchange in London very, very soon. So of course, they're going to want to come out and show some very strong backing from academic researchers. It's a smart publicity stunt, but of course, you should just be aware of the sort of inherent bias of when someone is funding a study and they want a certain result, and just so happens that that result comes out. Do I also believe that there's a tremendous amount of backing for Bitcoin as a currency and as a sustainable store of value? I absolutely do, but you should just be aware that there is some bias here. At any rate, there were three core aspects that the academic paper identified as the barriers to mass adoption. The first is that Bitcoin is a successful store of value, allowing individuals to make intemporal, not time-based decisions on when to spend their purchasing power, meaning if you have money, you can put it somewhere and know it's safe. Of course, Bitcoin has proven over the last 10 years to be the best store of value, better than almost any other mechanism in existence, especially considering how that store of value has grown exponentially. If you had one Bitcoin 10 years ago, it's worth about 6,000 to 7,000. It's worth almost 7,000 times what it was back then. So yeah, it's a very good store of value. As far as a medium of exchange and a unit of account, well, those are the things that it really struggles with, because obviously Bitcoin fees have been at points exorbitantly high, making it a difficult medium of exchange. And of course, a unit of account has been where it's honestly been probably the worst, because acting as a sort of consistent measure of account is where Bitcoin really tends to fail, as its volatility in relation to sort of traditional assets like a table or a house has been tremendously up and down, or the US dollar, for example. And do I think that it has to satisfy all three of these? No, and neither does the paper. According to the paper, meeting the last two criteria will require Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies to make progress on remaining challenges such as scalability, design, and regulation. However, I don't think that as a unit of account, it's really going to stabilize for quite some time. I think in correlation or relation to traditional assets, US dollars, houses, for example, cars, it's going to be a while before Bitcoin has a very steady value that you can rely on for years and years going forward. One of the execs at eToro, which was the group obviously behind funding the study, said the first email was sent in 1971, but it took 3 decades for the technology to become commonplace with user-friendly interfaces in the form of Hotmail. So obviously they're comparing that to Bitcoin. The first ever Bitcoin transaction took place a little over 8 years ago today, and we are already seeing it begin to meet the requirements of everyday money. Given the speed of adoption, we believe that we could see Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies on high street within a decade. There are, of course, barriers to mainstream adoption, but they are far from insurmountable. For those of you concerned, the VeChain wallet is now out, so you can go download it. You can start doing your token swaps manually. Obviously, there are participating exchanges, Binance, and a bunch of other ones being participating exchanges. You can just leave your VeChain tokens there, and they'll swap them automatically from VEN to VET. You don't have to do anything, but obviously, if you want to, you can use their mobile client. Also, if you have an X node, they have some very specific instructions on how to bind your X node from your old address to your new address, so you get your bonus X node status and you preserve that. We did a little video a few days ago on how to use their mobile client, so you can check that out. In potentially huge news, CBOE Global Markets has filed yet another attempt to create an ETF for Bitcoin, an exchange-traded fund that will be approved by none other than the SEC. Obviously, this has been a big stumbling block for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, is that we don't really have these ETFs. ETFs allow for really easy entrance of institutional money, and of course, with an ETF, those primary brokers like CBOE and other primary brokers, once these ETFs get approved, would be able to just go and buy up tons of Bitcoin. But obviously they might do this over the counter at first, but after a while, those primary brokers would have to go to the market, and this would create more demand for the underlying asset. And that could mean a serious bull run for Bitcoin. We already know that the SEC doesn't view it as a security, so it should be almost a no-brainer here to approve it. Hopefully this gets approved. This is the first time they've really submitted since the SEC has clarified this isn't a security. I think there's a lot of hope here. There's a lot of excitement here. So if CBOE gets approved, this could be the beginning of that ETF-fueled Bitcoin bull run that we've all been waiting for. Fingers crossed, my good people. And China is not the only place funding new smart cities of the future and relying on blockchain partners to help power them. That's right, the EU has funded a very similar endeavor, building a smart city, and they've called in IOTA to help with their blockchain-powered technology. If you know anything about my channel, I'm very big on IoT and supply chain management, cryptocurrencies, and that's why I invest heavily in those projects. And so I'm very bullish whenever I see news like this, because I believe this is really one of those places where blockchain reigns supreme. So hopefully we can see this as a very successful test, and we'll keep you updated as this project progresses. We just got word that a UK watchdog has welcomed the first cryptocurrency startups to their, quote, regulatory sandbox. Now, if you're wondering what the sandbox is, it's essentially this controlled environment where they let experimental businesses sort of test out their concepts while developing regulations to sort of help keep control of these markets, but they're allowed to test out their products on real markets with real consumers. So it's essentially saying we're not just going to let this all go and let it all fly, but we'll let a few curated companies demo their business models on the real market and see how it goes, sort of develop regulations around it. And this is actually a pretty awesome, pretty innovative concept. I really like how it's going forward. The UK definitely declared their desire to be on the forefront of blockchain and financial technology in general, and I think this is showing that they're serious about that point. We just wanted to say congrats to Maker. They've been making huge progress with their Maker DAI project, and they've now raised their debt ceiling to $100 million, which is equivalent, of course, to 100 million DAI, which is a stable coin pegged to the dollar. So very cool for them. You guys are having crazy success, and we need more projects to build up their liquidity, build up their legitimacy, build up the demand for their products, just like Maker's doing. And Delaware has made some moves on blockchain, awarding a contract worth $750,000 to IBM. IBM is all over the map, making deals with government after government. They are really using blockchain in every which way. It's very exciting to see how IBM is developing their technology, not only just with Stellar and their sort of international payment strategy, but how they're using blockchain in every which way to help facilitate this sort of government activities. And of course, once blockchain is really officially a staple of the government's activities, you can see it being undeniable as a useful technology across the rest of the private sector. It's really exciting. I really think IBM is helping blaze a new trail here, and we got to give them credit for that. And Binance CEO CZ just knows how to melt our hearts here. Just time after time, he seems to hit the right tone all the time, making news for all the right reasons. Our hearts go out to the victims in West Japan. Binance will begin a $1 million USD equivalent donation in BNB, BTC, or JPY. We ask all our crypto partners to join us in helping our friends in need. For those of you who don't know, there were some devastating floods in West Japan, and CZ and Binance are here to once again save the day. Just a beautiful thing, showing how we can use our tremendous success in this industry and help spread that around and make the world just a little bit of a better place. If you enjoyed today's FUD TV news update and you're not subscribed to this channel, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button, and don't be afraid to hit that bell notification so you'll be made aware whenever we put out new content. Obviously, we love to catch you down in the comments, so let's keep the conversation going. I'm Elio Trades, you're watching FUD TV, and I'll see you very, very soon on the next episode.